Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
In Unitarian Universalism, you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your expansive heart. Together, we create a force more powerful than one person or one belief system. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not have to check our personal background and beliefs at the door. We join together on a journey that honors everywhere we've been before. Our beliefs are diverse and inclusive. We have no shared creed. Our shared covenant, our 7 principles, supports the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Through Unitarianism and Universalism, though they were both liberal Christian traditions, this responsible search has led us to embrace diverse teachings from Eastern and Western religions and philosophies. Unitarian Universalists believe more than one thing. We think for ourselves and reflect together about important questions. We are united in our broad and inclusive outlook and in our values as expressed in our 7 principles. We are united in shared experience, our open and stirring worship services, religious education, and rites of passage, our work for social justice, our quest to include the marginalized in our expressions of love. Our opening words are unusually short. You need not be good to be loved. Forrest, Gilmore. The opening hymn, 289, Creative Love.
Creative love our thanks we give, that this our world is incomplete, that struggle greets our will to live, that work awaits our hands and feet, that we are not yet fully wise,
Our transitional words are 662. It's a responsive reading. Strange and foolish walls. The years of all of us are short, our lives precarious.
Our days and nights go hurrying, and there is scarcely time to do the little things we might.
Yet we find time for bitterness, for petty treason and evasion.
What can we do to stretch our hearts enough to lose their littleness?
Here we are, all of us, all upon this planet, bound together in a common destiny.
Living our lives between the briefness of the daylight and the dark.
Kindred in this, each lighted by the same precarious, flickering flame of life. How does it happen that we are not kindred in all things else?
How strange and foolish are these walls of separation that divide us.
Our program today is Julie Young. That's why I'm here. I got my arm twisted. She will read a sermon entitled When We Fail, given by Reverend Forrest Gilmore of Bloomington, Indiana.
Good morning. I read this essay by Forrest Gilmore, and I thought it was worth sharing with you. It's very personal, so what you have to do is close your eyes and imagine that I'm a fairly tall man, I think he has a beard, and that he's standing in front of you. The fundamental belief in the value of the individual has long held a central place in liberal religion. It finds a modern expression in our faith's first principle, an affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Such a conviction comes with a specific meaning, serving to counter another ancient religious principle, that of original sin. Affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person serves as our great response to one of the most damaging theologies ever spoken. As UUs and religious liberals, it is something we can be proud of and continue to speak loudly when the times call for it. Yet, sometimes, I wonder if we misunderstand the fullness of our first principle. In a success-driven society, I think we sometimes see it as affirming not so much our unconditional worthiness as a complete goodness in ourselves, allowing us to ignore the less savory aspects of our character. Affirming our fundamental goodness has its value, but such an emphasis can also lead us to miss the most essential implication of our inherent worth. We do not need to be good to be loved. To know this truth is to be healed. It is to embrace the wholeness over perfection, to honor ourselves, not as we might be, but rather as we are. I think interpreting our inherent worth as our inherent goodness can lead us to be very fearful about owning up to our own mistakes, failures, and even at times cruelty. Without a deep acknowledgement of our capacity for, to use the Christian term, sin, we lack a useful theology of accountability, forgiveness, even love. And yes, despite our inherent worth, despite our basic goodness, we do sin. The power of our first principle is not that we do not sin, but that even in our utter failings, even our most horrible of mistakes, we are still worthy of love. As a young man of 24, just entering seminary, I suffered deeply from an inability to embrace my failings. I resisted acknowledging all the wounds and weaknesses in myself, feeling the incredible need to be good, to be right, to be perfect, in order to be loved. I went through a ministerial career assessment, a required part of the process of becoming a minister, and was very nervous. I was afraid to give the wrong answers. The therapist asked me what my flaws were, and I didn't have the self-awareness to answer. It was a painful 3 days that ended with the group facilitator telling me the therapist had placed a nickel bet with him that I wouldn't be able to handle ministry. As hard as it was, the experience began a very painful, yet ultimately liberating, path of growing acceptance of myself, not as I want to be, but as I am, even when I fail, even when I am not liked. Life seems to test these insights, and subsequently, I found myself challenged more deeply than ever before. While serving my last church in Princeton, New Jersey, I fell in love and married a woman from Bloomington, Indiana. She had 2 children, and the 3 of us moved out to Princeton to live with me. Over the course of our time, I found myself consistently torn between the needs of the congregation and the needs of my family. My wife desperately wanted to return to Bloomington, but I felt a deep calling to continue to serve the Princeton community. My marriage suffered. My work suffered. I struggled mightily and fiercely and arrogantly to hold on to both, yet never had enough of me to do either well. After 3 years of struggling, at last I gave in, and we moved to Bloomington to raise our family near my wife's parents. I learned so much about being incomplete from that experience. I was not enough. I pressed on, hurting both my family and the church. I so badly wanted to have both and refused to see the inevitable, that the situation was unworkable. I also had to give up something very precious to me, something that made me feel like I was a good person. Not only my work as a minister, but also my dream of one day being an important minister. These were humbling awakenings. Letting go of parish ministry was perhaps the most painful experience of my life. But I surrendered to a humbler life, and I found a much deeper love inside, both for myself and for others. In full disclosure, after 4 years in Bloomington, my wife and I sadly decided to divorce. Self-acceptance remains an essential aspect of this transition for me. I never thought I'd be someone whose marriage would end in divorce. Yet here I am, incomplete, imperfect, and loved. There are a variety of things I find difficult with conservative Christianity, yet I believe the Christian story, perhaps better than any religious tradition, addresses our human capacity for failure. As the most obvious example, Jesus failed. He was supposed to be the Messiah. He was supposed to take on the Romans and usher in a new kingdom of peace for the Jewish people. But he died. Mission not accomplished. All kinds of beliefs have evolved to turn Jesus' death into a victory, most notably the belief that he died for our sins. But I find Jesus so much more powerful as a failure, as the man who lived and loved, struggled and hurt, succeeded and failed. Jesus, as a metaphor for God, knows us in his humanness, knows us in his weakness, knows us in his failure. When approaching the pain that comes with failure, we tend to find ways to pass over the experience quickly, to not allow ourselves to be present and actually feel what we're feeling. We get busy. We criticize ourselves. We criticize others. We dive into one self-improvement project or another. We try to see the positive side. When we fail, any response we make that does not invite in our simple experience of failure removes us from the wholeness of who we are. In so doing, we reject that part of ourselves that does not know success, alienating ourselves from a very real part of our humanity, damaging ourselves by withholding the love that we all deserve. It is certainly not in our interest to use failures as a means to belittle our worth. Yet, I think it is also not in our immediate interest to take our failures and turn them into something positive, lemons to lemonade. To attempt too soon to turn our failures into something good can be another way of avoiding the pain of failure, thus avoiding the healing that comes when we compassionately offer our presence to our hurt. 12-step programs are just one example of another way. Countless people have been transformed by openly admitting to their failures in the presence of a loving community. When we fail, we need to allow ourselves the time to simply feel the pain, experience the hurt. In so doing, we allow ourselves to remain open and true to ourselves, for this is ultimately what love is all about. Compassion means to feel with. When we feel our failures, when we allow ourselves to be present to them, without trying to change them or alter them, we know compassion, we know love. And this, I believe, is the true meaning, the greatest gift of our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You need not be good to be loved. And I believe this extraordinary gift, bequeathed to us by our ancestors, compels us to continue to offer this love to each other and our larger world, beginning with ourselves. May we surrender the need to be perfect, set aside the pretense of success, and enter into the humility of our full selves. We succeed and we fail. In the midst of both, let us show love.
Our closing hymn is 288, All Our Architects.
All our architects of fate, working in these walls of time, some with massive deeds and great, some with ornaments of rhyme. For the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled,
closing words are 694. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace. Know that you are loved and that your life is sacred.